Welcome to Riot Fest weekend. I'm James Van Ostel. This is Con Carne. Con Carne, presented by Alex Ross Art. Alex Ross, legendary comic book, graphic novel creator, and he has a pretty cool YouTube channel, and here's Alex to tell you about that.
Hi, this is Alex Ross. I appreciate you guys supporting our YouTube, and we create new content every week. I hope you will continue to support us, and please subscribe.
Con Carne also brought to you by a book called 90 Days in the 90s. It is a trip back in time to the 1990s in Chicago. It's written by my friend, Andy Fry, and he will be, along with his book, at Loud Pizza Records in Highland Park. That is happening on Sunday, October 1st, so you can get a signed copy, take the gray line back to the 1990s, and relive all the music, moments, and pop culture as Darby, the lead character, who owns a record store, goes back to Chicago during those amazing days. What bands does she see? What clubs does she go to? Relive it all. Get the book in person on October 1st at Loud Pizza in Highland Park. Con Carne also sponsored by Easy Automation, easy-automation.net. Are you a homeowner? Are you ready for a truly smart home? Does the idea of minimizing your energy usage while maximizing your comfort sound good? The answer is yes. Easy Automation will help you find a customized solution that is right for you. Their team has more than 30 years of collective experience in the industry and will tailor a service package that fits your lifestyle and needs. Doesn't hurt just to get a quote. Find out more. Go to easy-automation.net or call 630-730-3728, 630-730-3728. So I am in front of Riot Fest, and when I got credentialed for Riot Fest, I reached out to Mark Rose from Spitalfield, and I said, hey, before or after you guys play at Riot Fest, we should do an interview in the media area. And Mark said, cool, not a bad idea. I have a better idea. That idea was to do a live event, a live Q&A session at one of our favorite restaurants, Beard and Belly in Edgewater. Mark played a couple of acoustic songs, but before it, we had a solid 25, 30-minute chat interview about the band. It was Mark and TJ from Spitalfield, and that is what you're about to watch/see. This is Con Carne. Oh, we are clearly in front of Riot Fest. Welcome to Beard and Belly. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's probably a given, but who here is going to Riot Fest this weekend? Here's the great thing. Before our feet hurt, we wreck our clothes, our backs hurt, we can sit down and enjoy tonight's band. We can eat good food and drink awesome beer as we do it. Let's enjoy being adults here for tonight, and then this weekend we'll get stupid. So to introduce myself, I'm James Van Ostel. This is being recorded for a podcast I do called Con Carne, so thank you for, by extension, being part of that. And tonight, we broke our plans to play games with our hearts.
I get it.
I like that.
Uh-huh. Please welcome TJ and Mark from Spitalfield. So later on, they're going to play for us. But before we get there, this is a monumental moment. We're 20 years after the seminal release. Why do big albums have to be seminal? Why can't they just be significant or important?
You're right.
The seminal album, Remember Right Now, was released 20 years ago. And you're touring behind it for the first time in 20 years, kind of. I want to talk about the album, but before we get there, when that album came out, we joined Spitalfield in Progress. You were a band for about 5 years before that point. Take us back to the origin story, when you were bitten by a radioactive spider and became a band.
I would love to. And hey, give it up for James Van Ostel, everybody. Thanks for hosting this. And shout out to Beard and Belly, being our wonderful host. We're going to have someone from Beard and Belly speak just in a few minutes after we get through this first portion. But yeah, you know, the thing is, James, that we started because, well, Spitalfield started because we were all in other bands that were very different than that. We were in hardcore bands and ska bands and punk bands, and our original guitar player's older brother brought home some records for us to check out. It was the Get Up Kids Woodson EP, and it was Texas Is the Reason, 3-song self-titled, and Promise Ring, Nothing Feels Good. And we listened to those records and we thought, we want to start a band like that. And we did. and it was a side project for the first couple of years. And, you know, at those local shows that we were playing, it was kind of like, okay, but what about your hardcore band? Let's get to your hardcore band. So we were always doing that. And then eventually it shifted to become the focus.
Interestingly, we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of Remember right now. I've got to think at this point, the album is as old as you guys probably were when you recorded that album.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah, when we recorded Remember Right Now, I was 19. So it came out when I was 19, and then soon thereafter I turned 20. But you're right on with that.
Could you have imagined at that age that we'd be talking about this record in 2023?
Definitely not. No. No. And when we were making this record, it's like you've got your whole life to make your first, like, quote unquote big record, right? It's like all the things you're doing beforehand, all the development, the local shows, the local touring, the regional touring, working with local labels and et cetera. When we made that move and made this album, it was kind of like it was the biggest jump we'd ever taken as a band. And a lot of people say you have your whole life to make your first record and then you go from there. Well, we had records before that, so you're right to call that out. But it was kind of like the first record on a national and international level.
So as you talk about local shows, I think everyone in this room, I think everyone in Chicago loves to hear stories about venues back in the day, whether it's the Fireside or playing Metro or some of those DIY situations. Talk about coming up in the local scene.
Yeah, well, for starters, it was thriving. And, you know, where we grew up, which was DuPage County, we had a lot of local shows happening that were basement shows and VFW shows and church basement shows and things like that. And when we first got the opportunity to open a show at the Fireside, I remember specifically that our landline phone rang at my parents' house. And it was Brian Peterson. And he asked to speak with me. And he offered us a show. And it's because we had submitted to him a while back, and you know he'd comb through his demos because he did that. Like he was listening to demos and following along as best he could in this kind of like pre-digital era, and we got this opportunity to play at the Fireside, and we took it, and then next thing you know, we got another call to my parents' landline where it was like, hey, there's this band from Minneapolis playing. Called Motion City Soundtrack. We hope that you can bring out some people. This was 99. And we did. We brought out some friends, and they were the loudest band we'd ever heard, and they were on the Back to the Beat EP, and we were floored by that. But I think getting to perform in Chicago was a treat, right? Because we mostly had played in the suburbs. And when we started to, kick things into higher gear towards the end of high school, early college, we started to get the opportunities from Metro to be on their local showcase bills and to, pass out free tickets before, free before 7 o'clock and $5 after or something like that. And we did all these shows like that. And we really, busted our asses at promoting those. And that led to us getting opening slots for some national acts, and that kind of is where, honestly, we started to gain momentum. It was when those opportunities started knocking on the door. So, and I can't, shortchange the local promoters in the the DuPage area and greater Chicagoland area who, were throwing us bones. They were giving us opportunities, and we did our best to promote them. And that was a different time where you would stand outside with a flyer and a CDR or whatever and try to get people to come to your shows. Even like pre-MySpace, it was just like word of mouth was how you got it done. So we worked hard, and then we got rewarded, and then we worked hard again.
Let's talk about the reward of getting signed, getting this record, getting someone to put this record out, Victory Records. What was that knock on the door like?
Yeah, well, honestly, so part of it here involves TJ, to my left, to your right. TJ joined the band after... while we were releasing the Cloak and Dagger Club EP, which came before Remember Right Now. And TJ was in some bands in the Chicagoland area that we dug, and we'd played some shows together. And our bass player Terry had let us know, like, hey, I'm looking to focus on film school. I'm not really gonna, be able to commit to what you guys want to do. And we didn't know we were going to get signed at that time, to be honest, and fair to him. But we reached out to TJ. We jammed together. It all kind of worked out. And then at the release show for the Cloak and Dagger Club, it was us, and it was Logan's Loss, another great Chicagoland band, and it was at Metro, and there was a opener, a little known band that never made it called Fall Out Boy, and that night during the set, halfway through, Terry literally handed off the bass to TJ, and it was a big deal because Terry was our guy through and through for many years, and then TJ became our guy. And TJ played that show. I don't know how much you remember that show.
Well, we ran into Terry. We played the Roxy in LA probably about a month ago, and he was like, "I'm so sorry for heckling you at that first show." And I was like, "I don't remember that at all." But yeah, getting to play the Metro was totally insane because my first show ever, probably in 7th or 8th grade, my friend's dad took us to see Dinosaur Jr. at the Metro, and all of a sudden now I'm playing there. So. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and having TJ up there was great, and it kind of felt like the next chapter had begun, and it wasn't too long after releasing that EP that we ended up, signing a deal and getting ready to make Remember Right Now. And we were splitting time, really, like getting ready for Remember Right Now, splitting time between my parents' place out in Glen Ellen and your parents' place in Lake Forest, and it was just, everything felt like what could come next, right? Like a lot of that record was about who are we right now and what is coming next. And we wrote so many songs about the future that we now have lived through. But, those drives to Lake Forest and being on the highway and getting off at Half Day Road, like there was, I was in my dad's Buick that he let me use. But it was like, there was so much about that was just excitement. There was excitement about maybe what we could accomplish or what was possibly on the table for us. And I felt like the addition of TJ, it brought in this other dimension that we hadn't had before. And Terry was a great bass player too, and I love the bass lines he wrote on our first record and first EP and everything else. But there's one thing about Remember Right Now people talk to me about, and it's the bass tone. So that's all TJ.
Well, can we talk about the songs?
Would love to.
All right, so there are some Spitalfield fans here who've been with you for a while. Anyone have a favorite song on the album?
Those Days You Felt Alive.
That's a pretty easy one to go to. It's interesting. You mentioned that you're 19. You were 19 back then. I remember the first time I heard this album, listening to the lyrics, listening to the way you sang, I thought, there's a romantic hidden in this human body. Like there's a young romantic in there. Was that accurate?
Well, I had recently gotten into Jimmy Eat World, so yeah. Yeah, there was.
Those Days You Felt Alive, single. I mean, that's... Tonight we broke our plans to play games with our hearts. That's how I started things out. I mean, that's...
Right, yeah.
That's finding love.
Yeah, hey, those are some good lyrics, I think. No, but you're right. It's... I think that, like, honestly, what makes our band happen is the fact that everybody has something else they bring to the table alongside the lyric writing and the songwriting. Because, for me, it was really bringing an idea to the table and have everybody fill it in, right? And that's what makes a band happen. And I feel like, we've all seen what happens with much, much bigger artists that made it to a different level than us with like behind the music and all these stories and stuff where there's a lot of conflicting personalities and interests. But really those kind of like conflicting personalities and interests is kind of what made our sound what it was. And, it was, we were kind of wearing our influences on our sleeves, but we were putting together a lot of different influences. So by default, we had a unique sound, and especially that record. Remember Right Now, sonically, with the help of Sean O'Keefe and everyone else that was working on that record, it just sounded a little bit different than all the other records at that time, and I'm happy about that because that helps it stand out.
I think you captured relationship angst really well. Kill the drama. Please just kill the drama. Go to sleep. We'll talk tomorrow.
I remember that. Yeah. I mean, I literally remember that. But the thing is that, like, that I took a lot of, like, very specific moments and tried to apply them to more general lyrics. But, yeah, I mean, there's stories that go with each of them, some of which, you know, are maybe more personal than the other side of the equation. It would be fair to surely share. But I do remember specifically that lyric that happens in Kill the Drama, where it says, like, you know, I'm turning around, I'm turning it up, you know, I'm taking it out. That's, like, literally about, like, kind of, well, for lack of a better term, like angry driving, not like dangerously reckless, but like angry driving after like a fight with somebody you care about, and then putting on an album and like being like, I'm going to turn this thing up, and then being like partway through being like, but I actually really care about this person, and I'm going to turn it down and like maybe rethink, and then I'm like, I'm going to take this thing out, I'm going to throw it. Like, you know, it's a collection of thoughts that are happening in real time when you're just a kid and you're feeling feelings maybe for the first time that have real value.
I should probably know the answer to this. Who's Fairweather Friend about?
Well, we were saying it's Bruno Mars.
Yeah, we say it's Bruno Mars, and then it happened when we found out that Bruno's not actually from Mars.
That's correct. So that was, TJ was bummed about that. No, that actually, you know what, Fairweather Friend is one of the...
Everyone's got a Fairweather Friend, basically.
That's correct. Everybody does. And that is one of the songs on the record that TJ sings the lead on. And yeah, I don't know how much more you want to go into that one, but that is that's a TJ.
It's just a general thing. Everyone's got that friend. You think they're a friend, and then things happen, and you realize they're just trying to use you, or I don't know.
Greener pastures.
Yeah.
Right? They're looking for them.
Now, I could have sworn I saw someone eating the poutine tonight. Did I see someone eating poutine back there? Yeah. Which brings me to Make My Heart Attack on the album. To be fair, I love the poutine here. It's ridiculous. It's awesome. This has one of the biggest hooks on the entire album, and I'm a big fan of album sequencing and like learning about what led to that. This seems like an odd one to place at the end.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I will say that a lot of the like initial reviews that came out for the record all said front-loaded, right? That it was like, and I kind of agree. It's like 1 through 5 or like a lot of the slammers from the record. But as we revisit this album, you know, I start to really dig into some of the back half of the record, and of course it does close very strong. And a lot of people do, if they hung with it the whole time, that is a song they really like. And I agree, it was a big closer. Makes me question, you know, songs 6, 7, 8, and 9. But at the same time, like I said, we're reconnecting with those songs and doing the whole album top to bottom. Track 6 is In the Same Lifetime, which has become like my favorite song to play on this 20-year tour. Maybe just because I'm looking at it through a different lens and connecting with the song in a different way. But we really never played that song while we were touring too much. And maybe it's because it was too slow, or it was because we were playing with heavier bands than us and we wanted to keep the energy up and didn't want to slow things down. But when you are headlining to a room of people that are there just to see you, and that's the thing about this tour, is that whether it's a smaller show or a bigger show, the common thread is that everybody there wants to be there, and they're all there with a connection to this music for some reason or another. And while playing that slow jam is one of the times I can really look out and survey the crowd a little bit, and I see a lot of people, you know, really dialed into it, and I usually get more emotional during that song than I do during others, just thinking about, you know, my own music career, my life, and like getting the opportunity to do this again, and wondering when that comes to a close or whatever. So, I think that some of those deeper cuts later in the record become the biggest fans' like favorite tracks for different reasons, because they dig into the record in a different way. But yeah, it was an odd choice to close with such a banger.
Such a banger. So in reconnecting with these songs for this tour, reconnecting with this music that you created 2 decades ago, how does it feel? Like, how do you relate to these songs? Are you the same people that you were back then? Do you know those people that you're listening to?
I'd say no. First though, I don't know, Teej, how do you feel about that? Like, I think it's a weird challenge to revisit these songs, but in a good way, maybe? I don't know.
Well, I feel, and I've thought about this a lot lately, spent my entire 30s trying to unlearn my behavior of my 20s. It's kind of being emo and crabby, and it's just so nice to be an adult and play with you guys again. And it's been amazing.
Yeah, that's kind of right on, right? It's like when this record came out, and I had mentioned it earlier, we had written it about kind of the unknown, right? It's about like, who are we right now and what's about to happen? And all these songs are kind of this like coming of age, like, what's up next? What are we doing? Are we going to quit our jobs and get out of school and get into a van? And like, we did. But the difference now is that we literally lived that life. So all the question marks about like what's coming next, we've now been through it all. And for better or for worse, here we are with a different outlook and a different approach to it. And something that I say on stage pretty much at all of these shows is like, we don't take this for granted that we get to play music together again, because a lot of bands don't get that opportunity. And, knowing that there's records out there that matter a lot to me and matter a lot to every band member, and like the records that kind of made us who we are, to see people in the crowd who then come up to tell us that this is that record for them is nothing short of overwhelming. And, I don't want to take that for granted, and I hope I never do. And as a musician, it's like, yeah, these songs are 20 years old now, which is crazy. 20 is a big number. But, these songs poured out of us at that time, and people connected with it, and they held on to it. So, the other thing I say on stage is like, we can reconnect with these songs with who we are now, and we're all here. If we're here, we made it. And we're celebrating music and live music and each other and the experience. So, I mean, when Dan came up with the album title, Remember Right Now, I was like, that's it. And, Dan, who doesn't like write a lot of the lyrics or anything like that, had come through with album title after album title that really summed up how we were feeling. And in fact, all three of the Victory albums, Remember Right Now, Stop Doing Bad Things, and Better Than Knowing Where You Are, those all came from Dan. And it was almost like he could summarize everything better than I could after, I wrote a lot of the lyrics and whatnot, but it was really cool.
Listening to you talk, Mark, you're a very positive, very well-spoken person. Am I Ready always struck me as a motivational song. A blast of positivity.
Yeah.
For someone who's 19 or 20, I don't think I stopped being cynical till I was like 42. So to have that kind of positivity at that age, that's kind of rare.
Yeah, and there's a very specific story that goes with Am I Ready? So I'm glad you brought it up. And, this is somebody, it was written about or for somebody that we care about deeply, and TJ knows him. His name is Aaron Malott, and Aaron was kind of that figure in my life and in the band's life that when we were first trying to make a go of it, he was putting himself out there on our behalf. Now, he was not managing us, he was not booking us, but what he was doing was offering to help connect dots everywhere he could. And he was a director at a sports complex where he was, doing like, youth sports and stuff like that, and he would start repurposing rooms there to hold concerts, and he would always give us opportunities to play these shows. And then when we were booking our first tour ever, he was the one that said, hey, I'll drive the minivan, and hey, Mom and Dad, don't worry, I'm going to take care of these guys. And he was just a few years older than us, but it felt like an eternity at that time. And Aaron was out there like just through every step of the way. And when we got to a point where we were starting to talk to labels that were, above and beyond the local labels we've been working with, Aaron was excited for us. And when we signed the deal, I remember, he was out with us that night, and we had a good talk and stuff. And he said, hey, I've driven you guys across the country. I've put money in from my own pocket into recordings and into release stuff, and that was all stuff that I wanted to do for you guys. And now you've got this opportunity, and I'm going to shift gears, and I'm going to follow a different path, and I'm going to become a teacher. And I was like, well, you're one of the best teachers I've ever met for many reasons, so I would love it if you did that. And when he took that step forward in his life to get away from the music scene and booking shows and being a promoter and helping us, and followed his own passion, we wrote this song, Am I Ready, for him. And I remember driving around with him in his SUV when we had the first board mix of this album, and we went out because we used to just drive around in his SUV and just drive and listen to music, and I put it on and we were listening and he was blown away by the recording quality and he was so excited for us, and we got to Am I Ready, and I was like, this one's for you. And there's a lyric in there that says, you make that brand new shirt and tie look good, and a lot of people were probably thinking at the moment, like, brand new shirt, you're probably thinking the band Brand New. And the reality was I was talking about him going into his first day of teaching where he was wearing a shirt and tie and, was Mr. Malat instead of just being Aaron. And, it was a special moment that we had there. But I do think that song, you're right, it's uplifting, it's positive, it's all these things, but it's like a song that has allowed me to do other things too. Like, I've gone into my mom's first grade classroom and played that song with their kids, and we get to the call and answer and they answer, am I ready? Yes, you're ready. And they're all into it, and it's powerful stuff. So the song has taken on so many different iterations and meanings, and I hope that everybody that likes that song can apply it to whatever challenge they've got coming up. But yeah, I mean, that song was specifically for our buddy Aaron, who did so much for us.
Well, speaking of that kind of positivity, you're sharing a stage with Insane Clown Posse this weekend as part of Riot Fest.
Finally made it.
This lineup for this stage, for the Rebel stage, Corey Feldman,
yeah,
High Viz, you, Steve Ignorant Band / Crass, Issue Tune, Sleep Token, and ICP. That's a day. That right there, that's a festival in and of itself, and that's just one stage.
Also, Issue Tune is Hannibal Buress, if you didn't know that.
Okay.
Yeah, so this stage is wild. I mean, they're like, here's all these normal stages, and here's your stage.
So I know you've done Riot Fest before, but how do you feel heading into? I mean, this is the big hometown festival. This is the thing. How do you feel going into this weekend?
Feeling pretty good. Teach, how you feeling?
I'm excited because I was not able to play the first one you guys did, so I am very excited for this.
Yeah, I think I'm excited for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, Riot Fest is like, if not the best, it's one of the best festivals in the country. And, we're a little biased. It's in our backyard, and we have a lot of people that work there that we know. But it's also fantastic. And going into this Riot Fest, the biggest difference between this one and the one 5 years ago when we did this 15-year for Remember Right Now is that we've kind of been an active band now this entire year. So that one in 2018, I mean, it floored us. The opportunity was amazing. We crash course got together. We rehearsed for a couple days. We did a pre-warm-up show at the G-Man next door to Metro. And then we got out there and we laid it all out there, and then it was over. And it was like, as we finish our final chords, we're like, guess we're done. This time around, it'll be our 50th city of the year, which is crazy.
I did not even know that.
Yeah, 50. And it's like, this year we said yes. We said yes to the dress. We did. There were opportunities coming, and we were taking them, and it was like, we had an agent telling us, like, hey, like, there's kind of a hunger for the anniversary stuff. There's this window's opening. We've all seen what happened with, like, when we were young, and all these festivals that are starting to curate, single-day festivals with, like, bands of a certain, era, like, playing together and people coming out. And I, remember having the talk, like, with my wife, Liz, where I was like, well, if not now, when, for real? Because I don't know. Like, I don't know when these opportunities come back around. So, started reaching out to everybody involved with Remember Right Now, being like, hey, no pressure. Do you want to do this year? And if so, we can make it work for you. And while we were kicking around those ideas, we got this incredible offer to go on a tour with Hawthorne Heights and Armor for Sleep, where they were like, hey, you open this tour for us. And it was like 3 weeks straight. And we were like, whoa. We were talking about weekends. We were talking about, like, how do we ease back into this and figure it out? And we made it work. And, I mean, literally 3 nights into that, we'd played more shows than we had played in forever. And it felt good. And that tour was wild. And it was really fun to, like, reconnect. And on that tour, we had John Walker playing guitar instead of Dan, because Dan was not available to be gone for 3 weeks straight, just starting a new job, etc. And John was just an old friend and stepped in and crushed it. But as that tour was ending, we couldn't be more excited about doing our own shows because, they wouldn't be as big of venues and they wouldn't be, quite as covered by the press and whatnot. But we knew that we would have so much fun together. And first and foremost, playing music together was just the best. And it felt great. And I can't believe Riot Fest is already here because now I'm like, wait a minute, we're done? Oh man, okay, here it is.
Well, are you?
Don't know. I don't know. I just think that maybe now more than ever, and I don't know, I don't want to speak for Tej or, Dan's not here, so I can speak for him maybe. But it's we want to be a little more ... than we used to be, because it used to be we'd come out of the woodwork for a show or two, and then it would be like, bye, see you sometime, I don't know when. And that was just the reality of where we were at. And now that we've had this year, it's a little more like, hey, let's take a little time and, reflect, and then let's talk.